All right, let's jump right into this. We're looking at a really powerful idea that comes from a recent sermon, and it suggests a total reset for how many of us think about our entire lives. It's all about shifting our main goal from chasing happiness to pursuing holiness.
I mean, we all know this phrase, right? It's practically written into our DNA. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's held up as this basic right, and for a lot of people, it's become the yardstick for a good life.
But here's the curveball at the center of this whole idea. What if that default setting, the constant chase for happiness, is actually pointing us in the wrong direction? What if we're meant to be chasing something else entirely? So, this concept comes from a sermon that calls for what it describes as a holy reset. And it's really just a call to stop, take a look at what truly drives us, and maybe recalibrate what we're aiming for every single day. And here is the core argument in a nutshell. The sermon says that Jesus kind of redirects our attention. Instead of making our own personal happiness the top priority, the invitation is to make the pursuit of holiness the main thing. It's a fundamental change of direction.
Okay, so that immediately brings up a huge question. Because let's be honest, for a lot of us, the word holiness can sound a little stuffy, maybe a bit intimidating, or just plain vague. So before we go any further, let's get a really clear definition.
And check this out. To see how important this idea is, the sermon points out that the word holy shows up in the Bible over 900 times. When a word appears that often, it's a pretty clear signal that we're supposed to pay attention to it. And the definition the sermon uses is actually pretty straightforward. Holiness just means to be set apart for a unique reason, in this case, for God and for his purposes. It's about being distinct or sacred. The sermon gives this great, super simple analogy to make it stick. Imagine you dump out a bag of Skittles. If you go through and pull out all the green ones, that little pile of green Skittles is now holy in this sense. You've set them apart for a specific purpose. Maybe they're your favorite. It's that simple idea of being separated and designated. Now, the scriptural anchor for this whole reset idea is this verse right here. Jesus says to pursue God's kingdom and his righteousness, which is really just his holy character and his right way of living, before anything else. And the promise is that if you get your priorities straight, the other stuff, the things you need, will fall into place. So let's get practical for a second. The sermon draws a really clear line in the sand, showing where these two different paths, chasing happiness versus chasing holiness, actually end up leading. And it really all boils down to your focus. The pursuit of happiness by its very nature tends to be self-centered. The main question is, what's going to make me happy? But the pursuit of holiness is God-centered. The question becomes, what aligns with God's character and purpose? So the warning is that when a life is centered only on personal happiness, it can lead to some pretty destructive things. It can fuel selfish ambition, where we just climb over others to get what we want. And that can easily breed envy for people who seem happier than us, which can then curdle into anger and bitterness when things don't go our way. On the flip side, a life aimed at holiness is said to produce something totally different. It grows an internal peace that isn't shaken by what's going on around you. It develops deep compassion for other people. This bigger perspective builds resilience so you can face challenges not as threats, but as chances for real transformation. And this perspective completely reframes the hard stuff in life. All those challenges, in marriage or with raising kids or at a tough job, they stop being seen as just obstacles to your happiness. Instead, they become the very things God can use to shape you, to refine you, and to make you more holy. Now, it's really important to get this straight. Pursuing holiness doesn't mean you're signing up for a miserable life. The sermon draws a key distinction. Happiness is often fleeting, right? It depends on things going your way. But holiness leads to joy, which is described as a much deeper, more resilient state that can stick around even when you're struggling. It's a foundation, not just a feeling. Okay, so that's the why. It's a pretty compelling vision, but the sermon doesn't just leave it there as a cool idea. It gets really practical and offers some concrete steps for how you can actually start making this shift in your own life. It lays out a simple one-week challenge with just 2 action steps. The first is to pray every day, something simple like, God, reset my pursuit to holiness. And second, get intentional. Pick just one area of your life. Maybe it's your patience with your family, or the words you use, or what you watch. And for just 1 week, really try to align that one thing with this new goal. So in the end, this whole idea is really a challenge to our priorities. The sermon is basically saying that Jesus redefines what's actually worth our time and energy, and it leaves us with this big question to think about. When you look at how you spend your time, your money, your energy, what are you really pursuing?